Okay, just a quick welcome for everyone who's come online thus far, and a friendly reminder, we're going to get started in just a few minutes once the rest of the participants have joined at approximately 3:05 p.m. Eastern and 12:05 p.m. Pacific. So if you hold tight, we'll get started in just a few minutes. Thank you. Okay, so good afternoon and welcome everyone. First off, thank you very much for once again joining us for today's Inside CanWNT webinar session, the fourth in a series of 5 webinars, which are providing a look inside the Canada Soccer Women's National Team program. We sincerely hope everyone is staying well, staying safe from wherever you are tuning in across Canada or around the world. My name is Dominic Martin, Director of Marketing, Canada Soccer, and it's my pleasure as always to provide a quick intro and share a few housekeeping details before we get started. As certainly as many of you will have heard us mention before, this webinar series is a continuation of the Canada Soccer Nation Inside Initiative, which has been launched as part of our effort to support the Canadian soccer community during the COVID-19 pandemic. And for more information on the details behind this initiative, we invite you to visit canadasoccer.com. Continuing as your hosts, and as you can now see on screen for the Inside Canada WNT webinar series, our former women's national team standouts, Rian Wilkinson, currently Canada's women's national team assistant coach, as well as youth national team coach, and Robin Gale, Canada Soccer's Excel mental and cultural manager. We do have a world-class lineup of panelists set to contribute to today's session, which is certainly all about the team behind the team. And I will defer to Rian and Robin, who will introduce them in more detail a little later. We do sincerely thank all of our participants for making the time to participate in today's session. As a refresher on the question and answer format, we do encourage all of our attendees to submit questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A tool in Zoom. Questions will be selected to be answered throughout the discussion, and there'll be a longer Q&A session at the end. Please note, as always, we'll do our best to get through as many questions as possible, time permitting. A friendly reminder for those who are maybe new to this format, in Zoom, we cannot see the attendees, but we cannot hear you if you're speaking on your end, but certainly we encourage you to engage through the Q&A function. As a note, to optimize your experience in Zoom and during this session, we do recommend you select side-by-side view or gallery view if available to you. And this will help ensure you can see all of our panelists as well as the content as is being presented. Finally, as we always mention as well, we are working with technology. And if for any reason we lose connectivity during the webinar, we do encourage you to stay in the Zoom environment, and we will do our best to relaunch as quickly as possible. Fingers crossed we won't have any issues as we go forward today. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Rian and Robin to get things underway. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy.
Thanks, Dom. Hi, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for joining Rian and I for our 4th edition of Inside Can WNT. For the last few weeks, hopefully you've been able to join us as we've been looking at different elements of our program and getting a view and a lens from different players and different members of our staff. This week, we're getting some insight on how we integrate sports science, medical, and mental performance to optimize the performance of our players and ultimately the team. So really excited to have this one kick off, but before we get started, many of you may have seen the announcement last week from our head coach, Kenneth Einermuller, who unfortunately will be leaving us at the end of August. And while we're disappointed that such a lovely human and a wonderful coach will be leaving us, we're really grateful for the things that Kenneth has added to our team and to the women's national team program. And we certainly wish him and his family all the best with their future endeavors.
Thanks, Robin. Today, we're going to be speaking with Cesar Meylan. He is the lead sports scientist for both the men's and women's programs. He's not to be confused with the dog whisperer. They look quite similar, but he wanted me to make sure everyone knew they were in for a sports scientist today. Sarah Smith, who's the lead for medical for the women's team, and Alex Hodgins, who's head of mental performance for the women's team. The coach and the players are people we usually get to hear about on these webinars, but there's actually a whole team working behind the team. And we thought this was a wonderful opportunity for you guys to get to know them. The timing of this webinar could not have been better. With the departure of the national team head coach, you'll get a glimpse into the staff who are really running the program. Robin made me put that in. While Canada Soccer work hard to find the right replacement for the head coach position, you'll be introduced to the people who keep the program running, no matter who's at the helm. Also with us today, and no offense to the others, but obviously most excitingly, we've got Ashley from Man City. She's a 6-year veteran of the senior women's team. Sorry, that would be Janine, who's a 6-year veteran of the senior women's team, as well as 6-year veteran from PSG, Ashley Lawrence. So thank you both for joining us today and for adding your insights and ability to give real life examples of what these staff members will be speaking about today. Finally, a very happy belated birthday to Ashley, who celebrated her quarter-century birthday last week. So thank you so much for joining us today, guys.
All right, well, welcome, guys. Please, you can come off mute. Says, I can't tell if it's your bang or if you're frowning, but hopefully you're relaxed and feeling good. So to kick things off, everything that we do in our environment is about creating high performance, that high performance environment for our players, which is easy to say and it sounds really good. But Alex, I'm hoping you can kind of kick us off and explain, what does it mean to be a high performance team, and how do we cultivate this as a staff in our women's national team?
Okay. Well, I think one of the things that happens in high performance sport is to remain excellent and continue to push that bar of excellence. You have to improve faster than other teams because no one's standing still. You're either trying to surpass teams or teams are trying to catch up to you. So a lot of that means there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes you would never think or hear about that the staff puts together in their planning. And just some of the main things are, uniting the staff and having a clear vision of where we want to help push and take the team, as well as having a clear sense of purpose for why we actually want to do that. What are we about and what motivates us as a group? And when you have those things, you develop a bit of innovation and growth. I think there's a lot of collaboration that can come from that because everyone does have their own expertise, but when you have a clear vision, a clear sense of purpose that unites everyone towards the same common goal. But it also promotes challenge and the ability to hold each other accountable. And then within that, there's a sense of role clarity as well, and knowing what you deliver and allowing you to promote that and maximize that is absolutely crucial for each member of the staff. And then I guess the second part of your question was around the how. Just some little things we take a lot of time to discuss. We talk about purpose, we talk about vision, we talk about the goals we have on a big scale, but also on a micro scale for each individual camp. We spend a lot of time sharing that so that everyone's aware of what we're all doing. We always have our foot on the gas in the innovation and growth areas and just looking for what is the edge that maybe our competitors don't have. And then lastly, which is, something I think is extremely important from my corner, is psychological safety. We have a pretty well connected group that's been together for a long time, and we can be very vulnerable, challenge each other, but there's a lot of respect and know that it comes from a very great place and a caring place.
I think so.
Thanks, Alex. So when John Herdman arrived with the program, he integrated a 4-corner system. So tech, tac, there was also peak, which is the medical and the sports science, mental, cultural, and seat, which is more the management and administration. So a shout out to Maeve Glass and Andy. When Kenneth took over, he continued to evolve that system with a holistic approach to take care of the athlete, but also the person. Each of you lead in your respective corners within the women's national team. Cesar, I want to put this to you. You're head of the sports science, and when I think of that, we didn't want to say it, but what does come to mind is a lot of graphs and fitness testing. We hope it's more than that, but can you give us a summary of what exactly you do in sports science and how you use it to optimize the performance of the individual as well as the team?
Yes. Well, thanks, Robin. Rian, that's a good little summary there, fitness and graphs. Well, I think in what you said, there's 2 parts, and I like to sort of have this in my model. The fitness part is all about preparing the players to excel in the modern game. And so that means preparing the players from a strength and conditioning standpoint, from a game capacity, speed, and resilience. So that would be the picture on the left here, where I do a beautiful demonstration of some bend knee bounds. But that would be one big aspect around the fitness side of things. But the other part that you mentioned, which is the graph or more the data, is about optimizing that training. So it comes with, maximizing the player availability and regeneration. So we have to manage the injury risk, which we use, through training load management. So as the player is trying to push and the coaches are trying to push for that game capacity, speed, or resilience, we got to make sure that we are having a progressive overload, that players are hitting a milestone. We also use technology for return to performance or return to play from injury to make sure that those players return to a good benchmark. And then in terms of maximizing, we also look at the high performance habits of the players. So that's regeneration methods, like recovery methods, nutrition, and sleep habits. And so those are often we bring experts, for example, in the space of nutrition, and we also aim to educate the players about those habits that they can own and really optimize their training. So in terms of, it's a holistic approach. And so when you're talking about fitness and graphs or data, it's one is the practical aspect, and the other one is basically supporting the training in essence.
Thanks, Cesar. So many, but definitely something you mentioned is return to play, and I think I'll put this one to Sarah. So you work closely with Cesar with obviously the data, but also on field. We're obviously trying to make sure our players are in peak physical shape. Most people will think of medicine as, taping ankles and how to use some of those complicated machines. But again, we think it might be more than that. Can you describe what a typical day might look like for you? And what are your objectives as a medical lead in terms of preparing the team and trying to get everyone healthy for games and tournaments?
Sure. Yeah, great question. I think I'll start with the objective, and I think I can speak for all of us, even though we sit in different aspects of managing a player. Ultimately, the performance and supporting the performance of the team is the main goal. And really truly around those major events is where we target our strategies building up and actually in those tournaments themselves. So I think that one of the things that has evolved over the years is we do truly hold ourselves to the accountability of the team and their performance. And I think it's really great to say, oh yeah, we have no injuries, but if your team's not winning, then that's great for me personally. But again, it is about the performance of the team. So separate to that, I spend, along with Cez and Alex, a lot of time talking to the players when they're in their professional environments or in their collegiate teams in the NCAA, a lot of remote monitoring, and sometimes that's just talking through things that are going on or giving them a second opinion. We also spend a bit of time before a camp talking about availability and determining the availability of the players for that specific period of time. And then obviously when we're in a camp, as Cez alluded to, managing training availability and loading and using our knowledge of the players for those like fine nuances of the daily training adjustments. And then if any injuries do crop up, obviously managing those in the environment. So I think, and if we look at the two players that we have on the call now, we are so lucky that we actually get to follow a player through their careers. We've known Janine and Ash since they were in the U20s, and we watched them go through college and now having their amazing professional careers. And so I think we're so lucky that we get to look at a player from a longer lens over many years versus just like that day-to-day performance, but also considering the realities that they're in that moment. So I guess that's a little bit about the objectives and a day in the life. If I really like to get a workout with my two fellow colleagues if we can in the morning. That provides a little light entertainment and also some, a little exercise. And then we usually go into our staff meeting around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Then I will either meet with Cez or the rest of my medical staff, and we'll do a bit of an action plan for pre-training or for the morning's treatments, which usually come next. I get a little window of admin in there usually where I plan for the sessions, and so I really make sure I have a really good understanding of what the technical work is going on. And then after that, after training, there's usually another treatment window, and then we usually finish up around 9 or 10 o'clock, and we do a meeting. We talk about all the players, and then we make a plan for the next day. I review my key messages for the staff and then send out my report. And then sometime after that, there's some sleep involved. Sometimes.
Yes, sometimes. Well, okay, we're going to keep moving it along. So my following statement, maybe a little bit biased. I'll let Alex, agree to agree or disagree. But I think we've saved the best for last, right, Alex? Because, you know, the mind is really everything, and especially at the elite level, like that's the crux of performance. But, you know, mental performance has come a long way, and it's definitely one of the areas that coaches are increasingly starting to put more attention towards when they're preparing their players. So, Alex, could you tell us a bit about the work you do and, you know, what it is that you do to influence and impact performance in our environment?
Yeah, well, I don't think that's biased at all, Robin. It is the defining area that we should be focusing on. I think it all comes down to performing under pressure, and every game at the national level is important and has meaning. We don't play a lot of games, but on an individual level, but also in a tournament scenario, there's a lot of meaning behind each game. So to simplify, I tend to break it down into 3 categories in terms of what it is I do and the focus areas. One is on the individual level. Of course, we need to make sure that the human is looked after and taken care of first and foremost. We know that you have to focus on the athlete second to make sure that the human's taken care of and understand what allows them to excel, maximize their talents, and hopefully tap into their potential and capacity. So that's done through, you know, mental skills training, performance psychology skills, finding their needs. And then there's also the mental health side of it, which we have a plan for if we need to go down that route, if there's challenges or issues on the team. The second scope is the team itself, and that's more sort of where Robin, you excel, so I don't need to dive into that too much, but that's around the culture, the actual team connection. On the field, it's things like the communication and the ability to get each other going when needed. So little areas like that, and it can be done sort of team workshops and a few areas like that we can target off the field as well. And then the third component is the environment as a whole, like the psychological environment and what players are exposed to on a day-to-day. And that can be anything from the training environment, so contributing to what the session design may look like, how to prepare players or the training sessions so the players' minds are as stimulated and challenged as they might be in a game, which is a really important feature for a training session. The across corner impact. So we know that, you know, Sarah and her team have to deal with players giving them info around that maybe, you know, some challenges they're dealing with from a mental standpoint or some psychological challenges. So equipping the peak team with some strategies to manage that and refer towards, you know, myself or Robin. You know, Cesar in the gym, he's got to motivate athletes. So finding ways to help him motivate athletes, keep it fresh. He's been doing the job for a long time and knows these players well, and keeping it varied so that they stay motivated and hungry and pushing themselves in the gym. So just kind of the things they're exposed to on a daily basis, and how do we optimize that so they get the best out of themselves individually or as a team. So being able to look at the environment.
Yeah, thanks for that summary, Al. So you talked a lot about, like, you know, the things you're doing. Could you share some of the common challenges you find with, you know, getting elite athletes motivated or, you know, ready to perform under pressure? And what are some of the strategies, I guess, when you come against those challenges? How do you work through it?
Okay, that's a loaded question. I would say the thing to keep in mind, especially at the elite level, I think this is probably across sport, is elite athletes are outliers, right? There very few actually make it to the top. And that requires something unique, whether it's just a skill set. Some people have just this exceptional mindset that's allowed them to push beyond barriers. So we have to understand that working with these athletes, that they are unique and not the norm, and be able to embrace that. However, when you talk about challenges, there's things like perfectionism come into play. If they've always been the best and excellent all the way up until they reach the senior team, and then you hit this performance level where everyone's fantastic and top quality, and you're scraping, trying to get your way into the lineup, perfectionism can be there, and it can be a challenge to overcome. So making mistakes and errors or lacking consistency can become a problem. You deal with things like fixed mindset all the time. So trying to work through that. There's obviously the comparison comes into play, and that's, I think, natural human trait we tend to possess, but comparing to other people, whether it's on our team or other teams, consistency for sure, and playing lights out one day and then not being noticeable the next day, and how do you overcome that and contribute more consistently on the field. And then just underperforming is a constant worry and fear for athletes, especially, as I said, every game matters. I won't go into details. I guess you asked around the strategies for managing that. I won't go too deep, but just some things that I think are very important for me is gearing people towards self-mastery versus outcome and comparison. So how do you get the best of you, and what does that look like, and how do you strive to work towards that, and really pushing people towards being uncomfortable by elevating themselves. I think it's a really important piece, going towards challenge, developing the resilience that way, and encouraging them to make mistakes and go towards it, but learning and reflecting is absolutely crucial. Self-awareness is another big one, and I'm big on, anyone who knows me, I'm big on reinforcing strengths and what are you good at, because I know that under pressure, that's what we want to hold up, is your strengths and the things you trust. So gearing them towards really ingraining that, because we know that the things they've cultivated in their lifetime of performing are the best of what they've got, and the things they really trust are going to stand up under pressure. So let's try to maximize that and put our attention there. Deliberate growth, for sure. I love when athletes are planners and have an idea where they want to go and take their performance, and it's always fun to work with that and try to encourage that. And then just foundational mental skills that are, as you said, becoming more apparent in sport and society these days. So preparation strategies, imagery, activation, mindfulness, recovery. So making sure that the foundation's laid as well.
Well, thanks, Alex. So we sort of heard from the three of you with different questions, but you guys represent two of the four corners in our national team behind the team. Sarah, can you explain a little bit more about how we manage the priorities and challenges between all these people? Everyone has their own priorities, but it's one team and we're all trying to get our thing done. So how are these things decided and sorted out?
Well, anyone who knows anything about our preparation process knows that we have a lot of meetings, a lot of lengthy meetings at times, and there is a lot of discussion that goes on before we get into a camp environment. So before we've even got to day one, we've had endless meetings discussing logistics, location, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that is one of our key parts that was started with John and continued with Kenneth as well, is just spending a lot of time on those tiny little details and making sure that when we get into the environment that the players are in the optimum place for performance. So that's one part of it. And I think the second part of it is that, as you guys have alluded to earlier, that shared understanding and shared vision leads to some really good discussions about when those priorities come into it. So, if, say, for example, 2 weeks out of a tournament really says needs a big physical block, then maybe we strip out some of the other aspects at that point so that he can get his work done. And then as we get closer to the tournament, some of the physical stuff comes out, and then more of the mental preparation work comes in, or maybe some more tactical work comes in. But there's a little bit of a balance in those discussions. But at the end of the day, that sharing of the objectives and a shared understanding that we're going in the same direction really has allowed us to get to a point where that process is a little bit more seamless and a little bit more of a give and take, but understanding that each part is valuable, but each part is going to play a bigger part of the preparation depending on where we're at in advance of a tournament or a camp itself.
Thanks, Sarah. So we've heard, gotten a good background from two of our corners, heard from our staff here, team behind the team. Now we want to hear a bit from our players. Everything we're doing is around preparing and getting them ready to perform. So we'll start with you, Ash. As Rian mentioned early on, you already have 6 years with the national team. You've been a part of many clubs already at the age of 25. What do you feel sets our staff apart from other teams that you've played on?
Well, I think that now just kind of hearing from the staff and being a part of it, I know that the environment that is just created from Canada Soccer, it's an environment that really pushes us as players. It's an environment that is very welcoming, but holds us to standards. And so I think that for me, it was very important to kind of establish my strengths, things I need to work on, things I need to improve on. And it's so cool to have those support systems. We talk about the four corners, and just here with the peak staff, the importance of the physical side of the game. With me, especially being in fullback or even in midfield, it requires a lot of running and just like the emphasis on speed. And so I think with my game, that is something that I really need to focus on and highlight. And so it's really cool to have a plan and program set in place that's specifically for me. And even on the recovery side with Sarah, there are habits and just like exercises that are developed while we're in the environment that I'm able to take with me into my professional environment to continue that work there. So I'm just continuing to have that maintenance for when I am back in with the team. And of course, the mental aspect of the game is something that is really key for me. It's something that I recognize as a difference maker. I took psychology in school, and it was just something that I was able to take with me in sport and working alongside Alex, just the preparation for games. It's an everyday thing. And I've found that I've been able to develop something that works for me, and every day it evolves. And I'm really able to put it to the test on the field. And I've seen the differences in my game because of that. And I think just collectively having those resources has helped me, and of course other players on the team. And it's just specific to the player. And I think that's what's important. We all have things that are kind of our strengths and things that we need to go towards. But having the staff here just set in place, it's now being on the team for 6 years, it's been an ongoing process, but I've just seen a lot of growth and evolution in myself and the team in general. So I think it's just a very hands-on environment that helps, and the support goes beyond being in the environment. When we leave a camp setting, we're with our professional clubs all around the world. We still have that direct access to staff whenever we need them. And so I think that that's really something that continues to create that motivation, but also that drive to become a better player, to push ourselves, to push our limits, because we have that support.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. And that's a perfect segue, because you've talked about, how you're supported within the environment. And as you touched on in the end, the work doesn't just stop when camp ends. So Janine, I'll throw this next question to you. When we're together, it's amazing, but we spend a lot of time, you guys are at home. You also play for Man City. So how does the Four Corners staff continue to support you when you're in your club or your home environment?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel really nervous for some reason. I don't know why. Put on the spot here. I think that every great environment starts with great people, and that's what we always talk about. And I feel, and I can speak for Ash to this too, incredibly lucky to play on a team that has really good people on the team, behind the team. And that makes everything so much better, and it makes it so much of an environment where you really feel like you can push because you have that full support of those people behind you, and the full belief from them that in you, and knowing that they're giving everything that they have to help the team go further. And I think that's always set our staff apart. I've been in a lot of club environments, and I've never experienced anything close to what I experienced with our staff. But when you ask about what it's like when we leave the environment, I think that also touches on the accountability piece that is so key to our success as a team. And there's a difference between holding someone accountable and nagging someone and really trying to get them to do something that they don't want to do. And thankfully, I don't think we really have much of a problem with that on our team. Thankfully, we have a big number of players and obviously all the staff who hold themselves to a high standard. But with our staff, it's the perfect balance of accountability and trust that we're doing what we need to do in our environments to stay ready to come into the national team environment. We have a system that we can track our physical status with. We can do it on our phones. It's great. We do it every morning. We do it after every session so that Cesar and Sarah can see the load that we're being put under on our teams, and also if we've had an injury that day or that game. And then the response time is unbelievable. I think the accountability piece with Sarah and the rest of the medical staff is that if we have an issue, we will take it to them and not wait for them to come to us. And I've thankfully, knock on wood, not had a lot of injury problems, but I've had, little things here and there and have worked really closely with Sarah and just have such an appreciation for the communication that's involved in getting things sorted out. Do I have the right recovery tools? What kind of treatment do I need? What do I need to be doing on my own? All of those things are communicated. And something that I've really appreciated since I've been in England is the time difference and how it can be difficult to communicate on different time zones. And our staff is absolutely incredible about being timely in response to getting meetings set up. I talk to someone on our staff quite frequently and really appreciate that. There's never a time where I go more than a few weeks without communicating with someone in the national team environment. And I think that that's really special, and definitely knowing a lot of other players in the game, that's not normal for a lot of teams. So that's much appreciated. And then when it comes to, someone like Alex, obviously the mental part of the game was not something that I paid attention to very much before I got to the national team. And with the physical preparation, the medical preparation, mental preparation has become just as important as both of those things. I've always been a player that's focused a lot on being physically ready for a game, being fit, making sure I don't have injuries, but never really put in the time to take my mental game to the next level. And I think that that's really been the difference for me over the course of the last specifically 4 years. And my growth as a player, my confidence has definitely gone to a new level, and it's about consistency. And that's what Alex really pushes with me specifically. We've tried different things. There's been some things that haven't worked. And I think that's really important to recognize that there's not a specific formula for every player. It's trial and error, what works and what doesn't. And Alex is incredible in working with us and the patience to try those different things, because it can get really frustrating when you're not seeing the results and putting in the time. And then lastly, with Cez and the physical preparation, he'll probably say, I'm a bit of a freak about my fitness. It's always been something that I see as an edge, and definitely want to keep that edge. And I mean, passion is not lacking at all in our staff, but I really appreciate how passionate Cesar is about our physical preparation and being at the top of our games all the time. And I've just really appreciated that. And the fun that we have as a group with our staff, I would also say that that's not normal in a team environment. We're definitely one of the closest staff player in terms of relationships that I've seen and experienced. So that was kind of a long-winded answer, but can't say enough about our staff.
Thanks, Janine. I think you've pumped everyone's tires, so appreciate that. Loved what you said about Alex, and I have just a follow-up question for Alex. Obviously, you're dealing with national team players. You get to see them face-to-face only a couple times a year. The rest of the time, it's sort of remote support, as Janine was speaking about. What would be the first step for some of the coaches listening today, some of the young people, of adding mental performance into their environment?
I think that I think it depends on the context and the realities for each coach. And I saw a question someone had posed around they bring somebody in throughout the year. I think that's really important. If you can, and the funding is available to get an expert in, I think it takes that off of the coach. as their responsibility and puts it in an expert's hands, and whose job is to design and deliver a program catered to that team and that team's needs. So I think that's really important. However, I know that's not the reality for everyone at the grassroots level. And I would also caution coaches in that to make sure you get what you want out of it. So somebody who's, do an interview ahead of time and make sure it aligns with what the club or the team needs, because I don't know if dropping in and giving a presentation for 45 minutes every 6 weeks really changes much. So make sure there's some clarity on what you want and what can actually be done. So I think if I took a step back and look at the rest of us and the rest of the clubs, and knowing where at the clubs I came up playing in, where the funding might not have been as available for that type of thing, I would encourage coaches to get educated on. It's such an important and a crucial part of performing. And I think coaches can do a massive job of incorporating some of these skills on their own without that support, as long as they understand what they're trying to get out of it. So, whether it's books, whether it's podcasts, but just a general understanding of certain concepts and skills. And every coach I've worked with at the elite level has a massive understanding of the psychology of sport. So with that said, I would say in terms of like a first step, and if you're a coach delivering it, try to keep it on the field. If there's an expert brought in, maybe they need to do things in a classroom setting, but just bring things to the pitch. And that can be as basic as really being clear on what the intention for the session is, being deliberate around, this is what we're going to get, this is what we're doing today, what do you as players want to get out of it? And you can ask individually, and then you just start building the habit of players being deliberate and having objectives and goals for sessions. And then on the flip side of the session, debriefing with them and reflecting and teaching them the skill of reflection in a healthy way that keeps them, excited and kind of growth minded versus getting in that fixed mindset. I saw I don't know if anyone watched the Michael Jordan Bulls Netflix series. And I think if you look at Phil Jackson, I mean, this is, I imagine, as hard of an environment as you could possibly imagine introducing mindfulness into. And then they show footage of him center court before a practice session doing mindfulness with, multi-millionaire biggest names on the planet. So little things like that, breathing strategies, just getting them to be a little bit more self-aware, ability to calm down or dial up, and just little things. So I think, again, go back, educate, but try to keep it on the field as a coach so it's all linked and not feels like it's a separate part of performing.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, that's great for the people listening. So how they can use practical knowledge that you're delivering now in their environments. The follow-up question's a little bit the same lines for Cesar, and that is, how often should club coaches be incorporating proprioception into their training, especially for young girls when we know that they're more at risk for knee injuries? How often should they be doing it, and what kind of exercises would you say would be good for their knees and strengthening that area?
Right. Well, that's a good question, and it's not an easy one to necessarily incorporate within the actual technical sessions. It either has to be in the warm-up typically, but it could be also at the end of training under fatigue. I like to talk about neuromuscular training rather than proprioception, because proprioception, often people think that it's just somebody standing on an exercise ball or a Bosu ball and doing balance exercises. So the neuromuscular training, if you're talking about the knee, or the neuromuscular training in general, is multifaceted, right? It can be like strength training in the weight room. It can be core and glutes. So the control of the lumbar pelvic region is very important for knee injuries. Reactive strength, power, so like plyometrics, and then also teaching the kids or the young players change of direction mechanics, not reaching out and looking for that valgus knee. So it's a combination of many aspects of training. And that can be, like I said, incorporated in isolation in the weight room. But if you're talking about on the field, you can have it in the warm-up, just a few exercises between technical drills, or at the end of training, which I like a lot, especially when the players have mastered some movement, that you can do it under fatigue, because we know that injuries are often occurring under fatigue. So working on those movement pattern, on that strength or that stability is very important when you actually fatigue at the end of a training session. So that's something too that is useful, because often coaches want to build, you know, a theme within the warm-up and then have a flow of the session. And sometimes, you know, if you take 15 minutes to do neuromuscular training, it's kind of interfering with that flow of the session and getting, you know, technically sharp and all that. So I like also putting it at the end of the training session. And I would say if you want to have results, I would start very simple with very simple exercises, and I would try to do them twice a week at least. Obviously, if you have, you know, pretty trained individuals, you might have to do that training in isolation. But if your players have very low exposure to any form of resistance training or neuromuscular training, you can start with, you know, 2 times 10 minutes in the week to start to see result. And then obviously you would want to increase that stimulus, or increase the intensity and the complexity of the exercises. So I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Cez. I just realized that maybe I should have asked you about my personal program during this webinar, but we'll save that.
So that is not for injuries. That is for, I gave you a program for like 6 years, Robbie.
Yeah, but my training requirements have changed significantly now that I'm on staff. All right, so Sarah says enough about you. In the last couple of months, the entire world is now navigating the new realities of COVID-19. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing with our team, and how do you manage, you know, the various realities within COVID? So we've got players in different clubs across Europe, across North America. How do you deal with all of this during this pretty unusual and odd time?
Yeah, well, I think we're all pretty clear that this is not something that we expected or have ever experienced before. So I think there was a lot of early uncertainty about navigating this. And I think that the biggest challenge for us was we were in France, we were at a tournament, and then suddenly we were all home in a very different reality with a lot of unknowns, and even between our 2 players in their 2 different leagues, information was coming out at different times, and we didn't know it was a postponement or it was a pushback to or a cancellation, whatever it happened to be. So it was really difficult in those first phases to get some semblance of a plan together. And so we as a staff did need to meet and have a discussion about what we thought was best, and come up with a collaborative approach with input of the players and what they wanted in this period of uncertainty as well too, and what phases they were dealing with. And I think what was unique about what we did, and I really enjoyed our team workouts, and it gave the players a certain sense of collectiveness, but also gave them some, if you wanted to show up, you could, or you could do it on your own, and it was a little bit up to them and what they were feeling on the day. And I really enjoyed that part. And there was a lot of work on individual planning. And I think as professional players, they're so used to a daily schedule and routine and having a goal of, okay, we have a camp on April, and then we're headed to this and this and this and that. And so to give, you know, says working on their individual plans gave them some routine and some structure. But, you know, essentially we're used to spending a decent chunk of time away from the players. And so for us being on the phone or FaceTiming, that part wasn't unusual. And so I think that it just was that the lack of certainty about our schedule was more challenging, and definitely a challenge in motivation for our group.
Yeah, which I think is, you know, it's come up in questions in previous webinars, and that's a common theme with people managing in the sporting world. But you've touched on like the team workouts, some of the individual planning. Says maybe you could elaborate on how you've adapted the program. You know, the show in a certain way has to continue going on. So how have you adapted programs and the training with the, you know, the restrictions and players not being able to be out on the pitch?
Yeah, well, Sarah touched on a few things already, but I think like what she said was very right about the challenges, about the uncertainty, about our schedule. So first we thought it was going to be 2 weeks. That's what was said earlier, and that all the leagues were just suspended for a couple of weeks and people would return to training. Knowing that we are a national team program, players are in different phases of the season. So NWSL players were supposed to get into their preseason. Janine and Ash, they were supposed to finish their club season until the end of May, early June, and then the NCAA players, they were sort of getting ready for the Olympics and didn't have sort of a season planned out. So first we sort of went through an idea of like, okay, we're going to maintain what's been acquired throughout the season or since the start of the year for the NWSL players. But as the things unraveled, we realized that it was going to be a longer period of time until they would return to the pitch and train. So we went back to more of a generic phase because in physical preparation, you can only sustain peak performance for a certain amount of time, especially if you're not playing games and being on the field and training. So we went more to a generic phase, which is when the team workout were helpful in the sense that we were doing the strength workout together, providing variety in the sense that a lot of the players didn't have a lot of equipment. So we had to be creative in what we were providing the players with, and knowing also we were talking about the individualization that, you know, somebody like Janine was able to access a field and had a bunch of weights, and then Ash was still in Paris for a while, and you know, you needed like correct me if I'm wrong, Ash, but you need like a note if you wanted to go out during certain hours of the day. So it was very different for various players in terms of what they were able to do. But I think the most important, and it's come out in the leagues, and I'm speaking for people that are like returning to training now, returning to activity, is that allowing a phase of readaptation, especially if you haven't done a lot of on-field sprinting, change of direction, etc., is allowing a period of time of, you know, 3-4 weeks where you progressively loading the player to return to full training, because that will take a long period of time, especially at the highest level where, you know, if you look at some of our players, the most that they would be inactive is 3-4 weeks in a year, and then all of a sudden they haven't had access to the field for over 2 months. So there's definitely have to be careful in that sense. And so that's what we did, for example, with our NWSL players. We knew that they were going to return to training, and so that's what we aimed to provide them with, more functional training as they were getting closer to joining the teams before they get ready for that tournament starting at the end of the month.
Yeah, thanks, Cesar. It's, as you said, no one can plan for this, and everything's changing all the time. And what's interesting in Canada is East Coast is different than West Coast. We've got players down in the US. Now we've got players in Europe. So I guess to Alex, in this time of uncertainty and with all the players kind of going through different things, different times, how have you kept the players in a good headspace? And I know a lot of people are asking that question as well. Like, how are you working with them through this time?
I mean, I really hope I am keeping them in a good headspace or doing my best. I think there's Sarah and Cesar have already touched on so many important things. I like what Sarah said around essentially it's a choice, or meeting the players where they are. And Cesar touched on the 2-week concept, and that was where I was for sure. Like we were, as Sarah said, we were in France, and like we were just oblivious to what was actually happening in the world. And then we're about to fly home, and the Charles de Gaulle airport in Paris was empty, and it was like, what is going on right now? And then so we really, like, reality hit quick, but I was of the mindset that it was, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and then we're back. So if that's the case, then the mindset becomes, okay, how do we take advantage of this? What can we do that other teams maybe aren't doing? And how can we build the mindset in this time? Because for sure, if people are isolated, one thing they can still work on is their mindset. There's still things you can do at home. However, it became apparent very quick that this wasn't going to be a short isolation period and social distancing period. So then my mindset changed really quickly, because it wasn't about pushing players, and it was the reality is not everyone was in the same spot. Some people were loving the time off and the break, because we don't get a lot of time off from sports. Some people were highly anxious and highly unmotivated, so trying to get them to do mental work and put in more hours was not the right approach. And that became apparent. So one of the things we did early on was essentially like a check-in, and it wasn't just myself, it was the four corners, just to see where the players are at and what they wanted. And that provided a lot of clarity. But for me, the first thing was mental well-being is the main priority, and I wanted everyone to hear that. It wasn't about how do you elevate yourself in this window, it's about how do you take care of yourself and make sure you're okay with what the reality is. So that was priority number one. I really wanted them to focus on this sense of control, and to use the cliche, like control the controllables, because with so much uncertainty, you can get lost in that rabbit hole of what ifs. And I just wanted them to focus on what's immediately controllable for them. And part of that is their well-being, waking up, reaching out to people if they need to, connecting. I always want people to hunt the good stuff, and I'm just naturally ingrained to do that. So I was trying to encourage them to look for the good stuff, or at least if you are somebody who likes to go after the darker stories associated with that, try to minimize how much time you spend doing that. And then the other side is the emotional management strategies, because this is new and you can expect a fluctuation of emotions. And I just wanted athletes to be aware of that and embrace it and say, oh, this is just the reality. It's okay if I'm feeling uncertain and uncomfortable, and have some strategies to just manage that and move forward from that. As a team, every Monday, I send a little mental tip. I call it a mental flex Monday, and it's just a little tip or reminder or provocation depending on the week, and I try to make it timely. So whatever's happening in and around the world, or if they're getting back into their clubs, which has happened recently, giving some different tips, but some of it's just reminders. I always try to keep it light. It's a very simple graphic that you can look over in 2 minutes, and as I said, it's non-invasive, so people don't have to read it if they don't want, or they can just have a quick look, and maybe they're provoked and like, hey, that's a great idea, I'm gonna think about that, and others may just ignore it, and that's fine as well. And then the last thing I'd say is that every player knows, and this goes for Robin as well, that we're available, and that's just the reality. They can call at any time and reach out, and they have, and it's been great. Janine and I caught up last week, and I didn't even want her to hang up when she said she had to go. I was like, oh no, like let's keep this going. This has been enjoyable. So yeah, I think just knowing that we're there for support if needed as well goes a long way.
Oh, thanks, Alex. Well, you just talked about Janine, and maybe you could tell us a bit about your personal story through COVID and how, mentally and physically you stayed in a positive headspace for your upcoming season in the UK.
Yeah, I think I'd echo just what everyone said about uncertainty. For all of you that know me, I'm not someone that sits well with uncertainty. I'm type A. I like to know what's going on. I want to know what I have to do, when it's happening, all that stuff. So I've really struggled with that a lot. And I would also echo what Alex said just about, recognizing my feelings and recognizing that that's normal. But then, it was kind of like I'm really frustrated by this, and I can be really mad, but also the whole world is dealing with this. So the world's not about you. So I've kind of struggled with that a little bit, but my journey's been, like Sarah said, we were in France for the tournament out there, and then I traveled back to England, and I was in the facility for 1 day, and then they told us, we have to shut everything down for a week. So it's crazy to think now that they were saying just a week at the beginning of all of this. And then as things started to develop very quickly, it seemed, my club reached out and said, we'd like you to be where you're comfortable during this time. We have no idea what it's going to look like. So I'm very thankful that they allowed me to fly home. So I flew back to Denver at the end of March, about March 17th. So it's been almost 3 months since I've been in England, which has been just ridiculous. I would have never guessed. This is the longest I've been home since I was in high school. So I'm sure my mom's ready for me to get on out of here by this time. But Yeah, I think it's just been a week by week thing. I think, I've had multiple conversations with Cesar. We've had conversations with my support team at City. We've gone on the same call. We've tried to all get me doing something that's going to prepare me the best for, whenever we start things back up. And I'm super appreciative of the open line of communication and the flexibility. Like he said, I've been able to access a pitch almost for this entire time. So that's been really great. I've had some friends here, small amount of friends. We've kept our circles really small that I've been able to train with. So I've just been doing what I can. I also, all of you know, am not very good at taking time off. So I've really had to lock myself down and give myself a little bit of a rest, considering when things start back up again, it's probably not going to be for almost a year until we have, another bit of time off. So I've enjoyed our team workouts immensely. I think I was on every single one of them for like 3 weeks strong. And then I was like, okay, I probably should take a little bit of a break. But those were really fun. Definitely got the best of all of us. Some sense of community was really great. We definitely miss each other. But yeah, just moving forward, I head back to England this weekend, and hopefully things start to take shape in the next month or so. So I'm looking forward to that. But it's an interesting time. It's a great time. I think I'm more thankful for our environment as a national team now than I've ever been, which is hard to say because I've been on the team for 6 years and have had some incredible moments. But to see all of us stay so close, keep the communication open, and take steps forward during this time has been really incredible. I've been able to do, some things that I wouldn't be able to do if I was, in an off season or playing right now. So I've worked on my strength quite a bit. I've worked on my speed, which has been really cool, and have really been challenged to not be so type A for a while, which has been difficult for me, but it's been a good learning experience. And I hope that we have all learned lessons that moving forward, we all know that there's going to be a new normal is the cliche term now. So I have no doubt that this team, all the staff and all the players will make the most out of whatever comes next. And it's been an interesting time in the world, but I think definitely has been as positive as it could be.
Thanks, Janine. Well, you referenced that interesting time, and now we're going to dive a little bit into some interesting people. Someone who I think is arguably one of the most fascinating people I've ever met, says that's you. So you're originally from Switzerland. This guy, this joyous man from Switzerland. You've been working with our team since 2011. It feels like just yesterday, we were meeting you in Guadalajara. Can you tell us a little bit like how you came to work with the women's national team and a little bit about that accent that I'm sure some people are trying to figure out where it's from?
Oh, well, first of all, my mother tongue is French. So, but I think because I'm from Switzerland, they kind of force you to learn German at school. So maybe why I sound like I have a German accent sometimes, because I mix English and German accents. That's the scars from high school, maybe. And then, so I grew up in Switzerland. I did my undergrad in Switzerland, and I moved to Australia for a couple of years where I did a master's. And then my supervisor at the time, he was from New Zealand. He was moving back to New Zealand. So I followed him for my PhD at AUT University in Auckland. And that's where I had the opportunity to meet John. He was the technical director for New Zealand football and also the women's national team coach. And he was looking for students to help him out, some cheap labor. So we set out a scholarship, or him and my supervisor set out a scholarship for myself and my German roommate, Michael. And so I started working with John in the area of coaching, education, and long-term player development. And after a few months, he asked me if I was interested in working with the football firms, which I was delighted. I was like, one more thing, that's great. So yeah, we worked together for a year in New Zealand, and then he got the job in Canada and gave me a call And he said, "Oh, you gotta come, big man." It's like, it's another level. And so we still joke about that because this other level was first we were in that North Vancouver Holiday Inn, and then we were in Guadalajara, like you mentioned, for the Pan Am Games in those apartment where there was like 12 staff in a 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment. I had Andrew Oliveri, Andrew Pete playing footage above my bed when I was trying to sleep, analyzing games. So yeah, it was definitely another level, but a decision that I don't regret a single moment of my life. So I'm very glad I got to be involved with the team, and that's why I'm still here. So that's a bit of my journey.
Thanks, Cez. And the last question for you today. You have a daughter, a lovely daughter, who's born in Canada. So will she represent Canada or Switzerland? Because we know she's going to be an athlete.
Yeah, she's fast. I don't know if she'll be fit, but she'll definitely be fast and tall. So maybe she needs to pick another sport. Who knows? Or center back or goalkeeper. But yeah, no, I made sure she was having a Swiss passport within 2 months of her birth. But I will always leave her the decision to play for whoever she wants to represent. She's definitely Canadian at heart. She knows she has a family in Switzerland, but it's very distant for her. And that's fine. And you know, like, either country would be just amazing at any sport and any level. So I'll just be proud regardless, you know, like any dad.
Okay, you saved the answer. I think the majority of us would be most proud if she puts on the Canadian. I'll just take that up with her offline. Alex, last webinar we had Jade and Julia on, and they were talking about some of the, the challenges or the realities navigating, being a student athlete. So we know when we're in camp, it's the same for us as staff. We can be on the road for 30, 40 plus days at a time. You have a wife, you have a daughter, on top of being, the mental performance lead for one of the best football teams in the world. How do you manage it?
Not well. No, I think part of it's like practicing what you preach, and taking care of myself is really important so that I can be present. Oh, that's a nice photo. That's my little girl right there. I think one is communicating to my wife. I have an amazing wife, and she knows that my work is my passion. It's not a job for me, it's a passion, and which makes it sometimes hard to disconnect from that passion, but communicate that, and she's well aware, and I feel very fortunate to do what I do. So she's supported that as I do for her and her passions. And I think I often talk about this with other staff. I don't know how anyone did this job prior to FaceTime. Like, thank God, it allowed me to actually see my daughter when she was a child. She's only 2 now. And so watching her grow up virtually was the next best thing. But I make sure I do that every day, regardless of how I'm feeling. And as Sarah alluded to, some of the days are extremely long. But making sure you're present for those calls. And then when I'm home, I have to be present. So when I get back from the office, I shut off at least until my daughter's in bed. Phone away, computer away, like just fully committed to being there and being present and being the best dad and husband I can be. And I think that's crucial. Otherwise, you're sort of 2 minds and thinking about what has to be done. So I try to just ensure that when I walk through the door, I'm dad for that time. Yeah.
It's not easy. And, Sarah, you and your fiancé live in Utah. He works with the US ski team, and you work for the Canadian national team. So how do you live with that, frankly? But also, obviously there's a distance. You're traveling back to Canada a lot as well, internationally. How do you manage that sort of long distance, that division of loyalty in the household as well? Tell us a bit about that.
Well, unfortunately, the big white wedding was a COVID casualty as well, an unfortunate consequence as well. So we shall see how that progresses over the next year. I think it's interesting being in a relationship with someone who's actually in high performance, and they really they really understand what your daily schedule is like, and they understand, you know, if we are dealing with an injury, like how much weight is on my shoulders when I'm trying to manage that. And as Alex mentioned too, like you're so passionate about it, they really understand that is your priority. But it's definitely challenging. And Janine talked about schedules, you know, FaceTiming when we're in Europe and et cetera, like the other two had mentioned, it is definitely a work in progress. But his family are huge soccer fans. They went to France '98. His sister played with Lauren Sesselman in college. Like they're a huge supporter of the sport. And I think that has been huge. And I like to think that I've converted them maybe. So we've got a few extra fans, and he definitely is wearing Canadian jerseys to our games. So that's the most important.
I agree.
Yes.
Thanks you guys. It's obviously nice to get to know you on another level as well. For Ash, you talked about it a little earlier in the webinar about sort of getting up and down and making sure that you're fit. You obviously have your club in PSG in France. You're training for them, but like all our Canadian players, just so proud of opportunities to wear the jersey, the privilege of getting to represent your country. How do you balance that? So playing for your club, but also making sure you're staying fit and ready for the national team.
Yeah, so it's definitely been a process. I think just growing up, running in general has always just been like something that I've enjoyed. And I know that speaking to other teammates are like, what's wrong with her? But it's just been something like really natural. I did cross country. I was part of that. And so soccer was definitely a sport that was kind of perfect for that, a lot of running. And I think that being just with the national team, all of the emphasis on just the fitness with Cesar, it's so important. And I think that all of the kind of preparation that we've done, it's perfect because it was fitness, but it's also like on the field and soccer kind of focused. And so I think that's helped a lot for me, being especially as a fullback. That's key to be able to really get up and down the field for 90 minutes. And I think that's made a difference in my game. I always look at it as like a one-on-one battle with the winger, and it's every game it's me against her and she's not getting by me. But then at the same time, it's how can I kind of make her day like terrible. So how can I, as a fullback, attack and be threatening, but then shut her down? And so it's been cool to see something that I just love doing, running and fitness, almost seeing those 1 or 2% in gains in that, just with the work with Cesar and Sarah. I think also looking on kind of the recovery side, just the importance of stretching after training. What are those processes that I can do? Getting in the recovery kind of protein shakes or fueling, and just all of those details that are so important and that can make the difference in a performance. I think I've seen the difference. And so while I'm in the environment, getting that direct feedback, getting those kind of pointers on how I can improve, it's really cool to get to have those exchanges and to really hold myself accountable, but be held accountable by the staff members. And so I'm able to take that with me when I go into the PSG environment. Certain things that PSG is asking me to do, that's great. And then even beyond training, I can go into the gym, I can do some extra kind of exercises that I need to do to work on my strength or to go towards my fitness. And so I think that it's a combination of both environments. But at the end of the day, it's me being able to really learn that personal responsibility of the things that I need to do outside of the environment. And those things are an everyday thing. It becomes habitual. And I know that I've seen it over the last year, how much it's made a difference. And I continue to look at how I can evolve those little kind of percentages And I've just really seen a difference on the field.
I love that, Ash. I know a lot of people on the Q&As have been talking about how much you and Janine have said the word accountability. I think it comes across how serious our players are, you two are, about what you do. And I love make the defender have a terrible day. I love that attitude. That doesn't change whatever jersey you're wearing. For Janine, I was actually your U20 coach and Ash's, which is kind of fun. So went from coach to teammate to coach again. I remember the first camp, Janine, you were in Portland. You are a U.S. citizen and a Canadian citizen. That was an important camp for you because you decided to play for Canada. What is it about the team or the environment that made you decide to wear the maple leaf?
This is probably the question I've been asked the most in my entire career. So I gotten pretty good at answering it, but it's hard to remember back then because it feels so long ago. But I will start by saying, similar to what Cesar said, I do not regret my decision one day. 1 minute, I would do it all over again 5 times to play for Canada and to wear the maple leaf. So I was in the U.S. youth system. Obviously, I was born and grew up in Colorado, and my parents, just as Cesar for his daughter, made sure that I got Canadian citizenship when I was like a month old. Grew up in Colorado and then played with the under 18s and the beginning of the under 20 cycle with the U.S. program, and enjoyed it a lot. I have no animosity towards their program. They do things really well. Obviously, they have great success. But things weren't really working out for me there. I didn't feel like I was developing. And kind of as things do, it was very timely. Andrew Olivieri, who was in charge during that time, gave me a call and said, "We've been tracking you for a while. We understand you have Canadian citizenship. Would you like to come to one of our camps? Absolutely no strings attached. If you don't like it, there's no hard feelings, but we would love to have you." And it felt like a no-brainer to me, but obviously I had to, talk to some people and get the rules sorted out. So if I, wanted to come back, that FIFA would allow it. Anyways, all the logistics. So yeah, that camp was in Portland, and it was kind of one of those things where you just know where home is and where you feel like this is somewhere that this is right. I'm supposed to be here. And I felt that as soon as I got into the environment. The girls were incredibly welcoming to me. Obviously being in a national team environment is incredibly stressful and competitive. And I think most national team players that you would talk to say that they probably feel that when they go into camp, that it's I need to focus on my performance. I need to make sure that I'm playing well so that I can get on the field. And I honestly just didn't really feel that when I came into the Canadian environment. I felt the competitiveness, but it felt like, we want the best players here, and we want, the best people that can play, and we're going to put the best team together that we can. But again, it's what I spoke to earlier. It's the foundation of good people that make the environment so attractive. And that was what made the difference for me. And I also felt like from a football perspective, I fit in. I was going to play a big role on that team specifically. It's my dream. It was my dream to play on the international level. And to be quite honest, I saw a much clearer path there with Canada than I ever had with the US. And that's just how things went. That was just the reality. And I was very, confident in that environment. And that's been the game changer for me in my career, is being in an environment that I can thrive in from a confidence perspective. And that was that first camp there. I had an incredible time. And yeah, when I left, it was an absolute no-brainer that was the team that I was going to play in the under 20 World Cup with. And then after that tournament, I was very quickly capped with the senior team. So it all happened really fast, but I'm so thankful, for people like Rian and Andrew and, Danny Worthington, who has been there for, my whole time at Canada Soccer, just people that really made me feel valued from the beginning. And that's definitely not worn off at all these past 6 to 8 years that I've worn the red and white. So I want to represent Canada for as long as my body will let me. And yeah, that was, the best decision that I've made in my life when it comes to sport.
Well, thanks, Janine. Says, I hope you were taking notes there. So we're just quickly going to go into 2 audience questions just because we're going a little bit over on our time. So the first one says, this is an anonymous question, but someone would like to know, of the 3 staff members on the panel, who's actually the best soccer player?
Wait, are you and Rian not staff members?
We are, but you know, we're the host. I know that would definitely change your answer, so thank you. But between the 3 of you, who's the best soccer player?
We have different qualities. You know, I think Sarah is a crafty winger. Alex is a fox in the box. You know, when you play 4-side with Alex, he's always, you know, I think that's his hockey background. He's always around the crease. So yeah, he's always around the net, ready to poke one end. So he's got his own strength, and I think I'm just a bit of a workhorse. I definitely have some technical abilities that lets me down, but I think we all have our own crafts within the game.
You definitely bring some intensity. Let's put it that way.
They always bring intensity.
Well, says
Alex brings the composure to the game. He's a force to be reckoned with at the number 9. I'm just saying. I've had to play against him a few times.
at the 9?
Thanks.
Well, not. I mean, like, he brings composure. He's got that mental thing working for him on the field.
Something's not going right if you're playing against him and he's the 9.
No,
but,
he's probably out of position.
I'm versatile.
He is.
Says, I think you did a great job of highlighting how, you know, the cohesion of the team, but if you could avoid deflecting the question and answer who's the best.
You really, well, I've got the most playing experience. That's all I'm gonna say.
And definitely the most humble. All right, Ash and Janine, we're gonna.
That's all you wanted to put in. That's all you wanted to expose me. And that was it.
You know what? In our environment, it's all about exposing the truth. So Ash and Janine, my last question for you guys. You guys have both done extremely well, and you're so early and young into your careers, your international careers, both playing for 2 amazing and major clubs as well with PSG and Man City. I'll start with you, Ash, and then Janine, you can add or elaborate how you like, but we have a lot of players on right now who aspire to be, you know, where you guys are. What advice would you have for them?
That's a very good question. I think that there are kind of so many pieces of advice, but something that I've really just learned throughout the years is, really just being open to learning and to coaching. And so I think that coaches are there in place for a reason. And I honestly do remember some really defining moments in my career. A coach asking or a coach telling me the importance of using both my feet. And that was pretty early on. I remember only having a right foot. And every time I went to my left foot, it was just really bad. And I was embarrassed and I just shied away from using it. And so I think just taking the time, little by little, I could do like 1 kind of keep up or juggle and I'd catch the ball. Then I do 2. And then I saw that I was improving, getting better. And eventually I was comfortable with both feet. And that was really cool. And so that's been a difference in my game, especially now at the highest level. I think it just adds another dynamic, and going up against a defender, they're not sure what way I'm going to go. And it just really helps me to get out of like tight situations. And so I think that along your journey, or even when you're young, listening and really taking in the information, because there are people kind of in your life that are there to help you and to give you advice. And so just to really be open to that. And just another thing would be never compare yourself to someone else and their path. I think we're all unique in that. I have been cut by teams. I've made other teams. And I think those have been learnings and really challenging moments. But if I kind of look to my right and I see a teammate that's made a team and I haven't, don't get down on yourself because there will always be another opportunity. And so stay your course, trust in the process, and just know that when you continue to work hard and you continue to have fun with the game, that will be all the difference. Now with have been playing so many years, what really helps me is to stay passionate and to just be happy, have that feeling of when I was young, when I'm out on the field, that enjoyment is what stays with me and what really gets me through kind of the more challenging, difficult times. So just always be open to coaching and just stay your course, trust in the process, and really don't compare yourself to others because you're unique in your journey and process.
Awesome. Thanks, Ash. Janine, any pieces to add?
Of course, I have to follow that. So thank you, Ashley. Yeah, I think obviously I would echo everything that she says. But I think one thing that has been so important to me over the course of my career is that, and my piece of advice would be that your journey and where you end up is on you. And it's your responsibility to get where you want to go. I think we live in a society and in a world that allows us to put our own destiny on other people and make it their responsibility. So, I don't make a team because it's my coach's fault, because they weren't a good enough coach. And that's not where high performers, if you want to be a high performer, that's not how you get there. You have to own your development. You have to understand, we use a term, Alex uses a term, the end in mind. What is your end in mind? Is your end in mind the national team? Okay, these are the things that I know I need to do to get there. So have a plan. I've never been a goal setter. That's one of the things that Alex and I tried. It doesn't work for me. I don't like to say in practice, I'm going to score 4 goals. Like that it doesn't work for me, but it might work for someone else. It's trial and error, figure out what works for you. And then I think I saw a quote the other day that says, when you are given a criticism, our natural response as human beings is to be defensive, because most of the time the criticism that you're getting is honest criticism and they're probably right. And I've struggled with that in my career, coaches telling me, you weren't good enough today. And I might disagree with that because I'm being defensive, because at the end of the day, I do know that I wasn't good enough. So taking responsibility for your own development, putting those people around you that are going to help you, like Ashley said, having people in your corner that are understanding of where you want to go. Being a high performer and being an elite athlete is a very selfish lifestyle. So you can't have people in your life that don't understand that. And that might sound very selfish, but it's the truth. So if there's people in your life that are not aiding in your development, then, that might be someone that's maybe not in the best interest to have in your life. And I would just echo all of that by saying it is on you. There's no player, I would say, at any development stage that doesn't have the ability to be a national team player. I would even say when I was 15, 16, I definitely was not a great player, but it comes with discipline and commitment and all those, cliche words that people use. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the work that you're willing to put in. And I think there's a misconception with elite athletes that at times we're not human beings and we always have that motivation, but that's not true. There are times we are unmotivated. There are times I definitely don't want to do my workouts. There are times I don't feel like practicing. I've had a bad day. But the difference between those that make it and those that don't are the ones that decide to push through those feelings of not being motivated, or, especially in this time, we have no idea when we're going to be back with the national team. But every time I'm doing a workout, I understand at some point soccer is going to come back and I want to be ready and I want to have the upper hand over all those other players around the world that aren't doing the work. So if you continue to work on that mindset and have that selfish mindset of wanting to be the best, that pushes you through all those barriers of those people that don't own their own development. So again, a long-winded answer, but that's what I would say.
That's awesome. And what an incredible way to sort of wrap things up. Like Ash, I loved how you talked about not comparing yourself to anyone, that your journey is uniquely your own. And then powerful words from you, Janine, about ownership. And it's on you. It's really easy to point the finger at others, but until you can point it at yourself and work towards your ambition, you've got a long way to go. So thank you for that. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. It's always a privilege to hear from our 3 staff members who came on here today. I try not to tell them that usually, but I will in this public forum. They're some of the very best in their respective fields, and we are actually, and I hope everyone is very appreciative of having them on here today, but also how lucky we are in Canada to have them. And again, thank you to Ash and Janine for coming on the webinar and for your patience in answering the questions. I know we would all like to wish you luck in your respective seasons, whatever they look like. And also good luck on your run to Olympic gold coming up in 2021. To everyone listening, we'd like to let you know that in 2 weeks' time, we'll have our final webinar. We will conclude the series with another Players Lounge. Keep an eye out on the Canada Soccer social media platforms while we continue to confirm the players that will be involved and the date and time. Schedules are evolving with the NWSL as well as with Europe. So until those finalize, we won't be releasing exact names or players or dates. Throwback Thursday is tomorrow, where Schwame, the 2015 Owly Bird will be highlighted. So take a look at that on Twitter. And we hope you and your loved ones continue to stay safe and healthy during this time as everything slowly starts to unlock. Thank you last time for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.